The rain had been falling for 3 days without pause, painting the sky over Da Nang in shades of gray so deep that even the sea seemed to have forgotten its color. Lin adjusted her raincoat and stared at the cracked gates of what the locals called Ben Vien So Chin, Hospital Number 9. The iron letters were half missing, swallowed by rust and moss, but the name was still legible enough to carry a certain weight, one that pressed on her chest as she approached. She had been hired by a small documentary crew to record ambient sounds for a short film about abandoned places. For Lin, it was just another gig. She'd been inside temples, old schools, even a derelict prison before. But the stories about this place were different. Every Vietnamese child had heard at least one version of the same tale, a nurse who never left the ward. According to rumor, during the final years of the war, Ward 9 treated soldiers, both sides, when the bombs fell. The hospital was hit, and most of the staff didn't make it. Only one nurse, they said, continued to tend to the wounded until the building was reduced to ruins. Some swore she still walked the corridors, calling the names of patients who would never answer again. Lin didn't believe in ghosts, not really. But as she pushed open the creaking door, she felt the air grow heavier, as if the building itself had inhaled and forgotten to exhale inside. Her footsteps echoed on the tiled floor, brittle and uneven beneath the mud. The corridors were lined with broken beds, scattered bottles, and the faint smell of iodine still clinging to the damp air. She switched on her recorder, a small device with a red blinking light, and spoke softly into the microphone. Sound test. She took one cautious step forward, then another. The sound came again, clearer this time. A woman's voice, quiet but firm, calling a name Lin didn't recognize, and it was coming from inside Ward 9. Lin's pulse quickened. Probably an echo, she whispered to herself. But when she looked at her recorder's screen, her own voice wasn't there, only the other one. Lin hesitated at the doorway to Ward 9, her flashlight beam trembling slightly as it cut through the dust and dark. The air here was different, colder, sharper, as though time itself had stopped breathing in this single room. Her recorder still blinked red in her hand, waiting silently for the next sound to claim. There were 6 beds inside, each one rusted and half collapsed, their mattresses long devoured by mold. A few hospital charts still hung from metal rails. Their ink bled into meaningless stains. Lin tried to keep her focus on the work, gather sound textures, capture the ambience, get out. But curiosity, that dangerous friend of every storyteller, kept her eyes wandering. One bed stood apart from the others, pushed slightly toward the window where the rain trickled down in long, slow rivers. Something white fluttered at its edge, a small paper tag tied to the bed frame. Lin crouched and brushed away the grime. Beneath her fingertips, faint handwriting appeared, surprisingly neat despite the years. Nguyen Thi Thanh, ward nurse. Her breath caught. The nurse wasn't a rumor. She had been real. Lin's grandmother used to whisper stories about Than of Ward 9, the woman who refused to flee even when bombs fell. According to legend, she died while shielding her patients from shrapnel. Her body never recovered. But what if this wasn't just a myth passed down to frighten children? What if Than had the words were almost drowned by the static, but they were there. Lin rewound, pressed play again. Don't leave them. Her hands shook as she replayed it a third time. Each repetition seemed clearer, closer, as if whoever spoke was drawing nearer with every rewind. The flashlight flickered. For one brief second, it illuminated the far wall, and Lin saw something that made her knees weaken, a handprint. Fresh, wet, pressed against the wall as if someone had just steadied themselves there. Her breath hitched. The tag she'd touched moments ago now lay on the floor, its string torn clean through. She picked it up, but the handwriting was gone, the paper blank. Lin's instinct screamed to run. Yet another part of her, the same stubborn curiosity that had brought her here, pushed her forward instead. She wanted proof. Not superstition, not stories, evidence. She raised her flashlight toward the back of the ward. Where a single door stood slightly ajar, light glinting off the metal plate above it, the letters were faint, almost invisible. Surgical storage. And from inside, something shifted. A slow, deliberate scrape of metal against floor. As if someone were dragging a tray, Lynn swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hello? Is anyone—" The lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the ward whole. For a moment, Lynn couldn't even hear the rain. Only her own pulse, thudding in her ears like a drum. Her flashlight had died completely, the screen on her recorder flickering before going black as well. The silence felt alive, not just empty, but watchful. She took a slow breath, steadying her nerves. "Power surge," she whispered to herself, though she knew the building hadn't seen electricity in decades. Still, saying it out loud made it feel less unnatural. Using the faint glow from her phone, Lynn took a step toward the surgical storage door. It was only half open, its hinges stiff from years of disuse. The air beyond it was colder, carrying a faint metallic tang, the smell of old instruments and rusted blood. She hesitated on the threshold, raising her phone to illuminate them. Then she saw the mirror. It was tall, cracked in 3 places, and leaned against the back wall. At first, it reflected only her silhouette, trembling, uncertain. But as she stepped closer, something began to change. Her reflection lagged a heartbeat behind her movement. Lynn blinked. "Okay, that's just my nerves," she muttered, forcing a laugh. But the reflection didn't move when she did. It stayed perfectly still. Then, slowly, it smiled. Her stomach twisted cold. She stepped back, but the reflection raised its hand and pointed, not at her, but at the table beside her. On that table lay a medical chart, yellowed with age and bound with a brittle rubber band. Lynn hesitated only a second before unwrapping it. The first page was a patient list written in elegant handwriting, and there, at the top, she saw it again. Nurse Nguyen Thi Thanh, in charge, and beneath it a final entry, written in darker ink, Patient Linh Tran, status admitted, 3:42 p.m. Her heart stopped. That was today's date. That was the exact time she'd entered the hospital. A shiver crept up her spine, so sharp it almost hurt. She dropped the file and turned toward the door, but it had closed silently behind her. She reached for the handle and froze when her fingers brushed against it. It was warm. Someone had just touched it. Then came the sound, faint at first, like a soft humming, a woman's voice, singing. It was a lullaby, gentle, almost tender, but off-key, echoing through the metallic room. The same lullaby Lynn's grandmother used to hum when she was a child. She turned back to the mirror, breath trembling. The reflection was gone. In its place stood a woman in a nurse's uniform, old-fashioned and stained with time. Her hair was neatly tied back, and her eyes, dark, sorrowful, met Lynn's through the cracked glass. The woman lifted her hand slowly, pressing her palm against the mirror. Lynn's recorder, dead seconds ago, crackled to life on the floor beside her. Through the static, the same voice whispered, "They never left, child. They're still waiting to be saved." The mirror trembled. Lynn froze where she stood. The voice was gentle, too gentle, and unmistakably human. For a heartbeat, she convinced herself it might be one of her crewmates sneaking in to mess with her nerves. But no one knew she'd come early. She steadied her breathing, her back pressed against the cold door. "Who's there?" she called. Her voice bounced off the walls, thin and hollow. No answer. Then came a shuffle, fabric against tile, slow and dragging, followed by another soft knock. The same voice, closer now. "Please, come help us." Lynn swallowed hard. The corridor beyond the storage room was dark again, except for the faint green flicker of her recorder still lying on the floor. She reached for it, holding it up like a talisman. The red light blinked twice, then began recording again on its own. As she stepped into the hallway, the sound of breathing filled her headphones, not hers, slower and raspier. It was coming from inside the building's walls. The hallway seemed longer now, the angles warped by shadow. And then she saw them. Figures in the dark, outlines of people lying on the old beds that moments ago had been empty. They didn't move, but their chests rose faintly, shallow as the tide. One by one, Lynn's flashlight caught the faint shimmer of IV tubes hanging from nowhere, connecting each bed to the ceiling, disappearing into darkness above. The tubes pulsed, faintly glowing with a sickly light, like veins carrying something not quite human. Her heart pounded. "It's just my eyes," she whispered. "Light reflections, hallucination." But then one of them spoke, a man's voice, hoarse and trembling. "Nurse Than, is that you?" Lynn nearly dropped the flashlight. The patient's face was pale and waxy, his eyes open but unfocused. He looked straight through her. "It hurts," he rasped. "She said she would come back. She promised." The others began to stir, their whispers overlapping like wind through leaves, pleading, desperate. Some called for the nurse, others muttered fragments of prayers, and above all their voices, the lullaby returned, faint, mournful, echoing through the cracked ceiling tiles. Lynn took a step back, her instincts screaming to run, but curiosity held her in place. You're not real." His hand reached toward her, skeletal and shaking. The air grew heavier, thicker, like the entire ward was breathing again after years of silence. Lynn's phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out, trembling. A new audio file was playing, not hers. The title read, Ward 9, Recording 1975. The file began with a woman's voice, calm, professional. "Patient records. They won't make it through the night. I'll stay until the end." Then a thunderous boom, the unmistakable sound of an explosion. Screams followed, and through them, the same voice, panicked yet steady. "No, stay with me, don't leave them." The recording ended abruptly. Lynn's own recorder clicked off again. She looked up, and the ward was empty. The beds, the tubes, the bodies, gone. Only the cold rain outside, tapping gently on the broken windows. But where the man had lain, she found something glinting faintly under the beam of her flashlight, a small, rusted nurse's pin engraved with the initials NTT. As she picked it up, the air behind her shifted again, and the unmistakable scent of hospital disinfectant filled the room. A voice, right behind her ear, whispered softly, "You shouldn't be here after visiting hours." Lynn spun around, her light slicing through the stale air. But there was no one behind her. Only the hallway, empty again, breathing quietly like some great sleeping beast. Her heart hammered so loud she could hear it echo in her ears. The smell of disinfectant was unmistakable now, sharp and clean, cutting through the decay. It was fresh, recent, impossible. She clutched the nurse's pin in her palm until the metal bit into her skin. I'm just imagining this," she told herself, though her voice was thin, barely audible. "It's just residual smells, trapped chemicals, old..." Then she stopped. Footsteps. Soft, measured, approaching from the far end of the corridor. Lynn's pulse quickened. She aimed her flashlight toward the sound, and there she was. I didn't mean to intrude," Lynn stammered, her throat tight. "I'm just recording," the nurse finished for her. "Yes, I've seen you before, you know, many times." The words made Lynn's blood run cold. "Before? What do you mean?" Than smiled faintly, a tired, sorrowful smile. "They all come to record, to capture our suffering, our tragedy, but they never stay to listen." She gestured to the empty beds around them. "They're still waiting. I promised I would care for them. I never left." Lynn swallowed hard, her rational mind collapsing under the weight of the moment. You're not supposed to be here," she whispered. "You died." Than looked down at her own hands, pale, translucent, and nodded softly. "Yes, but the promise keeps me. Someone must remember them. Someone must stay." The corridor lights flickered, though there hadn't been power in decades. For a brief moment, Lynn saw the hospital as it once was. The beds filled with soldiers, nurses moving swiftly, the air thick with the smell of medicine and blood. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone again. Than stepped closer, her voice almost a whisper. They're afraid, lost between worlds. Every time the living walk through these halls, they awaken, hoping to be set free. Lin took a shaky breath. What do they need? Than's eyes, deep and sorrowful, met hers. To be remembered. To be named. She pointed to the far wall, where dozens of old, decaying name tags hung like wind chimes from rusty hooks. Lin hadn't noticed them before. Each one bore a name, but most were too faded to read. Speak them aloud, the nurse said, so they can sleep. Lin hesitated. And if I do? Than's expression softened, though her voice carried a shadow. Then I can rest too. For a long moment, they just stood there. Two women separated by half a century, bound by the same silence. Then Lin nodded. She walked to the wall, picked the first tag her trembling fingers touched, and whispered the name. Pham Quang Dui. The air shifted, a faint sigh, like wind through trees. One by one, she spoke the names she could still read. Each word seemed to lift a weight from the room. The shadows grew thinner. But when she reached the last tag, something changed. The name was written in fresh ink, clean and dark. Linh Tran. Her own name. She froze, her voice caught in her throat. What? What is this? Than looked at her with quiet pity. I told you, child, they all come to record. None ever leave. The floor beneath Lin's feet trembled, the ceiling lights flickering faster. The sound of heart monitors began to beep faintly, even though there were none left. Her recorder turned itself on again, its red light pulsing. From it, Than's voice echoed. Admitted. 3:42 p.m., cause of death, unknown. Lin's eyes widened. No, she whispered. No, that's not... But her reflection in the broken window beside her didn't move. It just stared back, eyes hollow and sad, wearing a nurse's pin with the initials NTT. The world tilted. Lin staggered backward, clutching the edge of a rusted bed frame for balance. The recorder slipped from her grasp and clattered to the floor, still blinking red. The air grew thick and heavy, saturated with the scent of antiseptic and rain. Every sound in the ward, the dripping, the creaking, the faint echo of the monitors, merged into one endless pulse, like a dying heartbeat. Her reflection in the cracked window stared back at her, unmoving. The nurse's pin gleamed faintly against its collar. Not hers, but Than's. Lin shook her head violently, trying to force her brain to catch up with reality. I'm alive, she whispered. I walked in here. I'm alive. But her voice came out hollow, distant, like an echo coming from underwater. Than stepped closer, her footsteps silent on the tiles. Her expression was sorrowful, not cruel. You came searching for stories, she said softly. You found one. But stories demand witnesses, Lin, and this one was never finished. I don't belong here, Lin said. The words felt fragile. I just wanted to tell the truth. The nurse's head tilted slightly, almost tenderly. Truth and peace are not the same thing. Lin's vision blurred for a moment. The corridor around her shimmered, and the hospital changed again. It was whole now. Clean floors, bright lights, the faint hum of generators. Doctors and nurses hurried by, their faces blurred, moving as if in another time. Lin stood among them, unseen. The beds were full again, wounded soldiers moaning softly, calling for help. At the center of it all stood Than, alive, barking gentle orders to the other nurses, her uniform spotless. The sound of explosions rumbled in the distance. She turned, looking directly at Lin, though Lin knew this was a memory. Get them to the basement, Than shouted. Go! Lin felt tears sting her eyes. She could feel the weight of the moment, the choice, the sacrifice. The nurse turned toward the ward door as a flash of white light filled the room. The sound was deafening. And then, silence. When Lin blinked, the hospital was decayed again, back to ruin and ash. Only Than remained, standing by the same bed as before, her face calm. "It's time," she said quietly. "For what?" Lin whispered. "For my shift to end." Than reached out, taking Lin's trembling hand in hers. Her touch was cold, but not cruel. "You spoke their names. You gave them peace. Now, someone must carry their memory." The world around them began to fade, the walls dissolving into mist, the floor into shadow. Lin's vision swam. The air felt weightless. She heard the rain again, softer now, as if from far away. Than smiled faintly. "Thank you." The nurse's form began to fade, her outline breaking apart like smoke in sunlight. Lin tried to call out, but her voice was gone. The last thing she saw was the nurse's pin slipping from Than's hand and landing in hers. Then, silence. When Lin opened her eyes, she was standing outside. The storm had stopped. The hospital behind her was still and quiet, its windows dark. She felt the cold metal of the pin in her palm. The initials were still there. Her recorder was on the ground beside her boots. The red light was still blinking. She bent to pick it up and pressed play. Her own voice came through, calm, steady. "Sound test. Interior of Hospital Number 9. Heavy rain outside time, 3:42 p.m. And beneath it, barely audible, a second voice. "Patient, Linh Tran, discharged." The recording stopped. The red light went dark. Lin looked up one last time at the hospital gates. For a moment, she thought she saw someone watching her from the top window, a figure in white, hand raised in a quiet wave. Then it was gone. She slipped the nurse's pin onto her jacket pocket and turned toward the road, her footsteps echoing softly on the wet ground. The morning sun was rising behind her, washing the ruins in gold. Her shift, it seemed, had just begun.